Okay, thank you for coming, everyone. Continuing our Thursday night Chabura. We missed Bereshis, but I'd still like to talk to you about beginnings, as we are here in the first week of Zman, really the first couple days of Zman. And I think Noach actually provides for us an example of both the beginning and the end of mankind, as they knew it, except in reverse order. First it's the end of mankind, and then it's the beginning again. And we find that at the end of mankind, before the Mabul came, there was tremendous corruption. The people were corrupt. By virtue of that, the Bria, the creation itself, became corrupt. And because of that, the Ribono Shel Olam needed to restart the world. He brought the Mabul, destroyed the world, and started all over again. And then we have the rebirth, the restart, the beginning again. Noach and his family. And what happens? Corruption all over again. Noach makes wine. The embarrassing episode with Noach's son and Noach. Everything is going corrupt from the start. This time it seems to be even worse than the first time that Hashem had the world going with Adam and Chava, although there was the sin of the Nachash really that happened right at the beginning there too. So seemingly the corruption begins immediately. What did Hashem do differently this time that was supposed to make it work better than what he did last time, which led to the entire world and the whole Bria becoming corrupt? Human beings, animals, everything. What changed now that he restarted the world after the Mabul? So I think one thing that we can say to answer this question is that the Ribono Shel Olam gave humanity a sign. The symbol that he gave to humanity, although of course there are many more symbols and areas in which Hashem can accomplish this purpose, but that symbol that he gave, which was so clear for everyone to see in the sky, was that rainbow. It was that sign in the sky that was the difference between the initial creation and now the recreation of the world through Noach and his family. Why does that help? Bottom line is, there still was a world that began with corruption and seemingly continued in corrupt ways. Individuals throughout history shone light unto the world with their recognition of Hashem and morals and the right way to be. But in general, it seemed to continue to be a corrupt world. So what's the significance of that sign that he put in that seems to be the difference between the initial and now the recreation? Well, as humanity drifts distant from Hashem, as we drift apart from Hashem, we stop to think about Him too much, and then we start to even think about other possibilities, chas v'shalom, as happened throughout the course of those generations of history. And as time continues to go on, what we are essentially doing is distancing ourselves from Hashem's absolute morality, and instead trying to use our human being imperfect morality. While Hashem gives us seichel and chachma to be able to understand and to make decisions, the bottom line is that we as human beings are not perfect, and Hashem is perfect. And so when we want to try to understand what's moral and what's not moral, we need to look at Hashem's perfection. And we need to draw from Hashem's perfection, His Torah, as opposed to just from us trying to sit around a table and figure it out. Let's see what makes the most sense to us. For example, should human beings, imperfect human beings, be the ones determining whether or not it is morally right or just to kill old people because they're old anyway? Well, let's make it easier. The old person says, I'm game. I've lived my life. I served my country. I'm happy with my accomplishments. My time has come. I'm prepared for death. So now we should say, all right, time to kill you. One last mouth to feed, after all. It'll be part of solving world hunger. We're doing it for moral purposes. Is that right or just? Is that moral or immoral? There are obviously, as we know in the world, two camps, two vehemently opposed Many very smart people on each side of the argument, arguing very strongly for each side of that argument. How do we choose who's right in that type of an argument? Is it moral or immoral? And the scary thing about such an argument is, if they're right, they're doing an amazing thing for society. If they're wrong, they're committing murder. It's not like, okay, if you're right, you'll get $10, and if you're wrong, you'll lose 20. It's not like that. It's tremendously significant. How about if an older person is hooked up to a resuscitation machine and there's no other one available in the hospital? And now a younger person comes in, they're about to die. We need the machine. Should we pull the plug? That older person is receiving the basic fundamentals of life, oxygen, liquid, to survive. Should we pull the plug and allow that younger person to survive? These seem to be impossible questions to answer. Of course, there are strong opinions, once again, filled with smart people on each side of the argument. How do we make such decisions? And yet, we seemingly, throughout the world, are put into the position of needing, as societies, to make these really scary, very significant, literally life-altering decisions. How about an unborn baby? When is it okay and when is it not okay to kill that fetus? Is it ever okay? What if the mother's dying and it will save the mother's life? Is it okay then? In the opposite extreme, what if it's just not so comfortable? You know, I cut my nails when they get too long. You don't stop me from doing that. It's my body. Just got a haircut last night and now I'm going to go. Do we allow that? Should we allow that? Those are the two extremes, obviously. And there are many scenarios in between. Where do you draw the line? In all those gray areas, where do you draw the line? Very, very difficult decisions. Give you one more. How about famous question that I've heard at Gateway seminars, and I think there's a Chazon Ish about it, famous Chazon Ish. I don't know about this exact case, but they apply it to this case. What if there's a train speeding down the tracks, and right around the curve, people aren't realizing it. There's a crowd of people standing on the tracks, not realizing the train is about to kill a mass amount of people. 50 people are going to die. 100% they're going to die. It's only a matter of seconds. But a few feet before that crowd of people, the tracks split off. And one person is standing on the other side of the tracks. Can you pull that lever to save 50 people and cause the train to plow into that one person, killing that one person? Hard question. How should we as human beings answer such questions? Where do we draw from to try to answer that? The greatest philosophers in the Umos HaOlam, of them, some of them said, the golden rule is whatever's going to save more life. You do whatever it takes. So in that case, yeah, you pull the switch. It's going to kill one person, but it's going to save 50 people. So if all the variables are true, that it's really for sure going to kill either the 50 or the 1, pull the switch. Save the 1, kill the 50. That's what you should, save the 50, kill the 1. I'm sorry, that's what you should do. Save the mass, save the numbers, go after the numbers. Okay, let's change the case a drop. What if instead of you standing by that lever, on one side of the tracks, there's still 50 people. On the other side of the tracks, there's no one. Right? So the obvious answer is pull the lever, right? But instead of you standing by the lever to pull it, you're actually on a cliff, a couple 100 feet away. You also, let's make this exciting, are a professional marksman sniper. You also happen to be hiking with your sniper rifle that day, and you notice the scene unfolding in front of you from the cliffside. And there's a man leaning against the lever, relaxing. That train is about to smash into 50 people. you can shoot that man in his head. He will slump over perfectly, pushing the lever, allowing the train to go onto the other track and hit nobody. Should you pull the trigger? After all, you're only killing one person to save 50. Would that golden rule still apply? In this case, certainly we know from a Torah perspective, it would be very different from the other case. Because in this case, you are directly, with your hands, killing someone to save the 50, as opposed to the other case where you are indirectly pulling a switch that causes and leads to the train killing one person as opposed to 50. I'm not going to paskin what you should do in that case. There are many poskim and chuvos and great Talmidei Chachamim who have delved into these cases and come out with conclusions. How did they do that? Humanity for all eternity has struggled with these questions, trying to come out with rules and then feeling a little uneasy when those rules are tested in extreme cases, because would it really still hold up in that case? And that is exactly because human beings are imperfect, but God is perfect. The Ribono Shel Olam gave us His Torah as a perfect tool to use and to extract from, to apply to any case that might come about. His perfect wisdom, to know what to do, even in these impossibly hard cases for us. Of course, nothing's impossible for the Ribono Shel Olam. And so, that's what they're doing. They're studying the Torah, they're studying other cases, bringing principles and rules and concepts that you can glean, you can take out of other cases and other areas of Torah and Talmud to be able to then use that knowledge and wisdom to apply it to even all of these interesting cases. What they're ultimately doing is using the perfection of Ratzon and Das Hashem and showing how it can apply and in which way it would apply in these cases. That's the beauty of the Torah that the Ribono Shel Olam gave us. It's perfect. So we have to be careful to stay close to that Torah, to stay close to the Ribono Shel Olam, because when we veer away from it as individuals and certainly as a society, when we stop even feeling bad about the fact that we've veered away, for example, the Medrash, which says that it was stealing that sealed that generation's fate to be destroyed. Stealing? Why the stealing? Because stealing is sensible. How could you allow yourself to be brought to that unless you've banished from your mind and heart any conscience, any connection to Hashem and His perfection, His wisdom, His Ratzon? Or the Chazal, the Medrash, that it was sealed because of the fact that they wrote ksuvos on Mishkav Zachar. Why not just say, because they were engaging in Mishkav Zachar? What's the ksuva have to do with anything? Because if they're writing marriage contracts, it means that as a nation, as a society, they're saying, this is what we do. We're proud of it. Maybe we should even make a parade about it. This is what we do. It's a bright point of our society. Not something we do, we're drawn after our taiva. No, this is what we do. You don't feel bad anymore? Then you've rejected Hashem completely. And the destruction has to come because now you have no more connection to that absolute morality and it all becomes subjective morality, which is really dangerous. So we have to stay close and we have to remember that the Ribono Shel Olam, when He recreated the world, He put that sign in the sky, and He, for generations to come, continued to make signs and reminders. And even nowadays, if we look, we can see signs and reminders that He's here, He cares, He's involved. And those signs are what can keep us on track. Even though the world started again with corruption, as long as He's continuing to make signs for us, and being more visibly involved, so to speak, than He was in those previous generations after Adam and Chava. If He's keeping us on that track, if He's making sure that we don't completely forget, that we remember and we stay close to him, then there's hope for humanity. Then even though corruption will happen because we're not perfect, but there's hope that we can always restart. We can always regain our bearings. Here you are at the beginning of a Zman. Reb Tzvi Berkowitz, at the beginning of, I don't remember if it was just Elul Zman or beginning of every Zman. Here we are at the beginning of the Zman after Sukkot, but for many it is actually the very beginning of the year, yeshivas, but be that as it may, it applies to the beginning of every Zman. He used to say the following, from the Chassam Sofer, who says, the word nolad has two meanings. Nolad can mean what was born already. But the nolad can also mean the future, which is interesting. In fact, many words in Hebrew, the same shorish can mean two opposite things. It's one of the interesting aspects of Lashon HaKodesh. So the nolad can mean the past, what happened, and the future, what will happen. And the Chassam Sofer used to say, Chacham roa es ha-nolad. Beautiful, beautiful line. The Chacham sees the nolad. Pasha Pshat, it means he sees the future. He can predict the future. Says the Chassam Sofer, how? We're not saying he's a Navi. He's not a prophet. How does he see the future? The answer is, because he's roa es ha-nolad. The Chacham is roa es ha-nolad. He looks to the past as to what happened in history. He learns from world history. He learns from his own personal history and the mistakes that he made and what led to those mistakes. And he thinks, what can I do differently in the future to change course so that it shouldn't happen again? And by being roa es ha-nolad, the past, he can then be roa es ha-nolad. He can better predict the future through gaining from those mistakes. Dr. Pelkovitz, a confirmed psychologist in the New York area, always says, whenever a person makes a mistake, instead of looking at it as a setback, I made a mistake, that's it, I'm knocked down, it's a setback. Look at it as feedback. He always says, go from setback to feedback. Don't let it push you down. Learn from it. And when you learn from a mistake, the mistake itself actually became a good thing. It was an opportunity to gain from that mistake to make you into a greater person. Perhaps that's part of the pshat in b'makom shabali tshuva omdim tzadikim gemur mein omdim. They are growing so much from those mistakes that they were able to learn from and then overcome. Go from setback to feedback. The Ribbon Shalom gives us signs to allow us to remember. The beginning of a Zman, you think back to last Zman. What were the mistakes that I made that didn't allow me to achieve what I wanted to achieve? And you start new right now. And you say, this is what I need to do day in and day out. If you do it, and you just think about today, and tomorrow you just think about tomorrow, and the next day you just think about that day. You don't think about the months that there are until Pesach, or the weeks that there are until the next off Shabbos. Just think about that day. And before you know it, you look back, months have passed, and you say, wow, look what I achieved. Chacham roa es ha-nolad. Look to what you've done in the past, and how maybe it was successful, and learn from that. Repeat that. And maybe it wasn't so successful, and figure out a way to do it differently for the future. I'll leave you with this last thought. What is a true hero? Somebody who we look up to as the strongest of people. So that person who, in the middle of a huge volley of bullets, he runs and picks up the baby from the ground and gets the baby to safety and finds an old woman on the ground and helps her up and gets her to safety. And in the midst of all the violence and danger, is that a hero? Absolutely. Should we honor, award, recognize, sha'akar satov, everything to that person? Absolutely. But let's not forget a very different type of hero that often is forgotten and applies to every single human being in the world, and therefore each one of you. Let's bring it out like this. That person who has a family, He's a father, he's a husband, and he wakes up early every morning to go to work every single day. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and so on and so forth, week after week, month after month, year after year. It is so easy to give up after so much time passes, and then more time passes. The same thing. But he has to support his family. Or he has to support the organizations he supports. Or he has to support Klal Yisrael with his limud Torah, with his learning. Whatever that person is doing, the accomplishments that he's accomplishing are only grand and become so much more infinitely powerful because he goes in and day out and doesn't give up. He just keeps going. That's a hero. That's a person who, in many ways, when the adrenaline is not pumping and you don't hear the bursts of gunfire in the background, trust me, none of us want to be in that situation. But in many ways, in a certain way, it's easier to be the hero in that case, with the adrenaline pumping and chaos reigning all around you. None of us want to be in that situation, and that person deserves the most utmost respect and award for doing such a brave thing. And many people fail that type of situation also. But in a certain way, it's easier. That one-time momentous event, adrenaline, as opposed to waking up again, and then the next morning, and then doing what's chashuv, what's important for you, for your family, for your community, for the whole world. That's hard, but that's what it takes to look back at the end of a zman and to taste the sweetest taste that there is in this world. It's not any food from any cook or any restaurant. It's true achievement, true accomplishment. There is no one in the world that will argue with that. From the psychologists who have studied it scientifically to the simplest people who just know it to be obviously true. True achievement, significant accomplishment and achievement is the sweetest taste Olam Hazeh, this world, has to offer. You get there by doing small things that seemingly are not so sweet and don't accomplish so much every single day. And you don't look, oh, I'm going to get there in a few months from now, because then you end up giving up. You just look at today's small accomplishment. And it's hard because it's not so sweet. But if you're able to do that day in and day out, months later you look back and then you look back and you say, whoa, look what I did. Look at all the notes that I took. Look at how much I gained, how many skills I was able to grow in. And you look back and you say, wow, that is the sweetest taste that this world has to offer. There will be up days and down days. There's no avoiding that. As Rav Wolbe says, there's Yemei Simcha and Yemei Evla for every single person. There can be a few days of easy, light, everything goes smooth, and then a few days not so smooth. Trick is to plow through those days knowing that the good days will come back soon. Gamza Yavor will come back soon. But if you give up in those bad days, then you're going to prolong them. Then they're good. Avera Goreres Avera, in this case, letting yourself just giving up is not going to bring in those light, easy, smooth days faster, that's for sure. It's just going to get worse and worse, and then it will continue. Chas v'shalom. So, Mirz Hashem, at the beginning of this Zman, we should all have chizuk to stay on that track, even when we don't taste the accomplishment so much in the day in, day out, even when we have the more difficult days that we all will have. Continue. Just keep going, knowing that in the short term, the good days will come back, the smoother days will come back again. And in the long term, you will taste that beautiful taste of true achievement and accomplishment. So, Mirz Hashem, I'll leave you with a bracha. You should all have a great Zman. And through us all having a great Zman and all the great things that we're doing, we'll be Zochatam Mashiach Tzidkenu B'Meir V'Yameinu Amen. Have a great Shabbos.